Welcome to the channel. I'm Mark Headley, your host for today. Welcome to another episode of Scientology's Tom Cruise Spy Files. Before we get started on today's documents, I wanted to answer a few questions that I've seen in the comments of the videos over the last few weeks, and in regards to the spy files and some of the things that we're covering. One of the first questions I've gotten a lot of is, why are we covering these documents that took place over a decade, or in some cases, almost 2 decades ago? Well, first of all, those are the documents that are leaked. So those are the ones we're covering. But second of all, in Scientology, L. Ron Hubbard is the one they consider source. And all of Scientology's policies, all of the way they do the counseling, every single thing that's codified in Scientology was written by L. Ron Hubbard. And we're talking thousands and thousands of policies and bulletins and rules and all sorts of things. And one of the key things that he did in regards to these policies and these rules is, the first rules are, you can never change these policies or rules. So anything that L. Ron Hubbard wrote is the sacred texts in Scientology. Now, in addition to writing thousands of policies on how they do all the what they call counseling, which is the auditing, where you hold the cans on the e-meter and you try to get rid of the space aliens, he also wrote policies on how the organizations are supposed to be run and who's supposed to report to who and who does what duties and how they do those duties. And down to the nth degree, he has codified and documented every way they're supposed to do it. Now, most of these policies were written in the 50s, 60s, and 70s. Now, in addition to all those policies, L. Ron Hubbard also wrote what you've seen them referred to in some of the files that we've covered, these things that are called OSA network orders. And those are policies for the Office of Special Affairs. And those policies were written when the OSA's predecessor, the Guardian's Office, was operating. And when Hubbard was writing them things to do, those things that he directed them became the policies that they operated off of for the rest of time. So if you've got an OSA network order that was written by L. Ron Hubbard in 1971 or 1969, those policies are the exact same policies that the Office of Special Affairs follows to this day. And they can never not do those policies. And that's one of the things that makes Scientology predictable to some degree on how they'll handle things in relation to private investigators and lawyers and attack ladders and stuff like that, is because those are codified things that they have to do. One of the things they have to do, no matter what is being done, they have to establish the enemy's loves and their hates, and they have to attack the things they love and amp up the things that they hate. They have to do that no matter what. That's what Hubbard said to do, so that's what they have to do. So the policies never change, so that what they do can really never change. So in the fact that we're covering these documents today that are talking about a South Park episode that Tom Cruise and Scientology are the subject of, Scientology's losing their minds. David Miscavige and Scientology are freaking out that there is an episode of a cartoon on a Comedy Central cable channel that's talking bad about Scientology. Can you imagine what they're doing today? Can you imagine what happened when Going Clear, the movie Going Clear, came out by Alex Gibney and Lawrence Wright? Or when the Leah Remini and the Aftermath, Scientology in the Aftermath TV show came out, or the Louis Theroux movie, or the books, and there's so many things that are happening right now, and Scientology are likely up to all sorts of nonsense in the background trying to get these things shut down, because that's what they have to do, and those are the policies that they have to follow. Okay, so that's the first. The second question was, there's a lot of people have written to me, and I did ask people, I said, hey, if you think you're in a file, let me know. And if you wrote to me and asked me to search it and I didn't answer you, then that means I couldn't find anything where you were in any of these files. And the thing I wanted, a lot of people are surprised that we're covering Tom Cruise or we're covering Rolling Stone or LA Times. What about all the nitty gritty people? If you are a Scientologist or you were wronged by a Scientologist, let's in the middle of Keokuk at some Scientology outpost, it's that organization's problem to deal with you. Unless you are causing international press or you're writing a movie or a TV show or a book that's going to affect Scientology internationally, OSA International and the international headquarters of Scientology, they're not going to know about your thing because that's for the local organization to handle. And if they don't handle it, it's for the local continental organization to handle. And I don't think unless that problem, wherever it was in Kansas City or Adelaide or, Brighton or whatever org it was, Scientology org it was in the world, unless that thing is going to become an international flap, or it's going to be talking about David Miscavige or Tom Cruise or something like that, the international, OSA International and the Int Base likely have no info on it because it's not their problem. And so most of the files that we're going to cover are going to be about international things that are happening or something that's going to directly attack David Miscavige, Tom Cruise, or Scientology. I'd say 95% of what OSA International does is deal with international articles, media, TV shows, movies, books, or keeping Scientology and David Miscavige out of lawsuits. So that's what OSA International works on, those things. And so I'd say 95% of these documents are going to be about those types of things. And that's what we're going to cover. And it also, even though they might not be talking about these people and that are in the far-flung orgs, OSA is likely the local OSA Office of Special Affairs or the local director of special affairs in the organization is still going to be doing this type of stuff to a lesser or greater degree. He's not going to be meeting with power agents in Hollywood, but he is going to be trying to dig up any information and maybe, talk to the person's friends and find out who their enemies are. And that stuff they're going to do, but it's going to be done locally. So I hope that answers that question. And if you had a family member that was in Scientology and they got wronged or they did something wrong or they committed a crime or whatever, your local Office of Special Affairs is likely where that information or those files are going to be located. Okay. So as we do in all these documents, the first thing we're going to cover is the key players. So let's bring that up. Okay, Scientology's Tom Cruise spy files, key players. Of course, we have David Miscavige, chairman of the board, RTC, Religious Technology Center. We've got Tom Cruise, teen matinee idol. We've got Mike Rinder, who was WDC OSA at the time. We've got Burt Fields, that's Tom Cruise's lawyer. Michael Dovin, he is the head of Odin Productions, that's Tom Cruise's entertainment production company in Los Angeles. And we've got Paul Block. He is Tom Cruise's publicist. Brad Gray, the CEO of Paramount. Kevin Huvane, he was the head of CAA, Creative Artists Agency, which is the agency that repped Tom Cruise at the time. And Rick Nacita, and that was Tom Cruise's specific CAA agent. Okay, let's get to the document. Now, this first document is kind of a throwaway, I will admit. In the very last video we did, the last Tom Cruise spy files we did, there was a document that was laying out all the things that were happening in relation to Comedy Central and Paramount and Viacom and the timeline of all the people moving around. Well, it looks like they're about to have a meeting with a bunch of these people. And what they did was they just took all of that timeline and they just made that a document, and it's called briefing sheet. And as far as I know, this briefing sheet, it looks like it was distributed to the people on Scientology's side that are about to attend this meeting. And it is literally a cut and paste of one of the last video's documents. So I'm going to show it here and we'll kind of skip through it, but I'm not going to read the entire thing because it's literally, I checked it. It is a cut and paste out of the other document. So it says read Comedy Central, Paramount, / Viacom. And it says an analysis of the data since Tom Freston came on. And then it just goes through all the different things. Les Moonves takes over. Sherry Lansing left. Second page. They have these different articles that were written. Who's supporting what? David Geffen's doesn't like Tom Cruise. And then them talking about Doug Herzog. How isn't he? He's really excited to meet Tom Cruise, but South Park just did an episode on Scientology, blah, blah, blah. Okay, so that's that document. Okay, now that document is from, let me see when exactly it's from. This briefing sheet is from 6 December. Okay. And so this next document is called Debrief 7 December. And this document is essentially the minutes that were taken at that meeting, and it's a debrief. So let's get into it. It's from 7 December. It says debrief of meeting at CAA. Again, that's Creative Artists Agency. And I will try to explain anything in here as we go, but for the most part, this is what happened at this meeting with all these folks. And it's most of the key players that we brought up are at this meeting. So it says the meeting began at 8:30 a.m. in a conference room at CAA with Michael Dovin, Mike Rinder, Bert Fields, Kevin Huvane, Rick Nacita, Paul Block, and Arnold Robinson. Arnold Robinson is, I think, a partner at the PR firm or works at the PR firm that Paul Block is. I think it was called Rowan and Conow or something like that. I'll put it up on the screen, whatever the company, the public PR agency that they worked at was. We started with the LA Times and okay, so if you watch these earlier documents, LA Times is going to do a story on Scientology, and it's happening, like they're getting it ready, or it just aired, or I mean it just came out or something like that, but it's been going on for months and months and months. We started with the LA Times and Dovin giving an R factor that we were there because action needed to be taken on the LA Times in South Park, and we would start with the LA Times as this was immediate as they were working on completing the story. Okay, an R factor means a reality factor. It just means when you explain to everybody what's going on, what is the reality of what we're dealing with. That's called an R factor in Scientology. Okay, we handed out the questions and everyone read them. Paul Block said his reading of the questions is that this is a story about Tom Cruise being controlled by the church and David Miscavige. And when they say church, that means Scientology, in case you guys weren't catching that. Everyone agreed with him. I gave some background on what had happened with the reporter and the history with Graham Barry. That Bert chimed in on and said was an absolute outrageous false stuff. I told them that the bottom line is that this is an attack on Tom Cruise and the LA Times isn't going to have any impact on the church or David Miscavige, but it's targeted at the entertainment industry and trying to influence this, and they have a responsibility to act on this. Michael added to this and said that Tom Cruise is the biggest movie star in history. Did his biggest movie in ever was awarded 2 lifetimes. Did his biggest movie in ever. I don't know what that means. There's so many typos in this. Did his biggest movie in ever was awarded 2 Lifetime Achievement Awards this year, and it is not okay that they are trying to attack him. We both were quite forceful on this at the outset. Okay, we should play a drinking game for this document on how many times Mike or Dovin or anybody talks about how awesome Tom Cruise is. So if you guys want to play, drink responsibly. And you can take a shot of apple juice if you want. It doesn't matter to me, or hot cocoa. But I'm going to take a sip every time Michael Dovin or somebody in this document says how awesome Tom Cruise is. It's just water. Okay. Immediately, Bert stated that he is writing a letter and CCing the legal department and putting them on notice, as this is the same old crap and this is not something that anyone can sit around and watch happen. Yeah. These people are all being paid thousands and thousands of dollars to say this, by the way. Kevin Huvane then started, except for Michael Dovin and Mike Rinder. Everybody else is making money right now while they're doing this. Kevin Huvane then started, and he got on more of a roll as he went on. He said he was going to call the LA Times with Rick, and that this in itself would create a stir, as they never, or very rarely, speak to the media and definitely don't reach out for them. Both said that it was outrageous, and that the implication is that anyone else is involved in his career, they do every deal and handle every cycle, and they have done so with Bert Fields for nearly 20 years. And there has never been any involvement with the church, and he has never even met David Miscavige. Okay, so now he's talking about Kevin Huvane, his agent. What they don't know is that Tom Cruise is talking to David Miscavige full time, and that David Miscavige and Scientology have saturated Tom Cruise's entire world with Scientologists and Scientology spies that report everything to Scientology. Everything. Okay, so it's funny that he's like, yeah, we've never even met David Miscavige. Yeah, your boy Tommy is the one who's meeting with him. That the whole slant and tone of this is discriminatory. I asked him what would happen if he substituted the word JEW or Catholic for Scientologist, and he said that he had been thinking the exact same thing. He said he wanted to go on record and get quotes in the article from them as this is crap. Rick echoed his sentiments and said that he thought Paula should also be calling the LA Times. Paula is Paula Wagner, who was Tom Cruise's producing partner at the time. Kevin got more riled up and said, "We are known as the mafia because people say we intimidate people, and it is time for us to do so." Whoa! That was Kevin Huvane. Did Kevin say that? Let me read this up anymore. Kevin got more riled up and said, "We are known as the mafia because people say we intimidate people, and it is time for us to do so." I think this is probably going to have to be a short. Kevin started talking about how outrageous this is, that someone can be attacked for their religion in the United States. And wouldn't the ACLU do something about this? And we need to get more groups on board, as he is sick of seeing this man attacked for his religion. Well, if your religion is ripping off old people and destroying families and conning people and is a giant pyramid scheme that makes David Miscavige a multi-millionaire and no one's being helped, I think this one point might be up for debate. There was some discussion about this, with Bert saying he thinks the ACLU would take the other side, i.e. free speech, but we should check it out. Rick then says, that was Bert, Tom Cruise's lawyer, by the way. I love how they get all riled up and they're like grabbing the pitchforks and the torches, and Bert's like, hey, whoa. It's a free speech issue, you maniacs. Rick then says he is on the board of the California ACLU, and he is going to speak to the head of the ACLU. Bonanza. Ricky boy, going for it. Okay, page 2. They talked more about the questions and how outrageous they are, and what about his box office and the fact that he is hardworking, decent, ethical person. The gold standard is how Rick described him. Everyone agreed that what was needed was a full-out assault, and that the objective should be to pull the underpinning out from this concocted story. There was no CI at all. They knew this was serious, as they were all gathered together at 8:30 a.m. and didn't attend their staff meeting at CAA. CI means counter intention. It just means someone who's against what you're doing. So the calls are being made with Block first, then Kevin and Rick and Paula, and concurrently the letter with Bert. Okay, so that was all just about dealing with some questions that an author, a writer, Kim Christensen, had sent to them, and they needed to answer those questions. We took up South Park. Bert said he would write a letter to Summer Redstone and Freston. I briefed them on the time track. They each read it. Kevin commented that Sherry Lanson had greenlighted the South Park movie, and when he told her he thought it was inappropriate because they unalived 5 of his clients, including Tim Robbins and Sean Penn, that she told him the movie was funny and not to worry about it. He said that he agreed she was a good ally, but that she also pushed South Park. Kevin explained that he had given an ultimatum to Brad Gray to handle it, or he was going up the org board, and that if that didn't get it handled, then he would recommend his client go to some other family with the family members didn't torpedo him. They said that even Saturday Night Live hasn't done anything. That was a what do you call it? That was they jinxed themselves. Hasn't done anything, and that it is all coming from Viacom companies, and it is really sick. Rick made a comment about Gray being concerned about there being a flap about stopping free expression, and Michael leaped halfway across the table and slammed his fist down and said, F that, F that, F that. That's BS, and this is a business decision, and they have $6 billion in income at stake that they can tell that little s to drop dead or words similarly. Drink. Rick was kind of startled, and he said, "You're right." There was no more Q&A about this. Q&A means question and answer in Scientology, and it means when you kind of waffle on getting something done, and instead of just doing the thing, you kind of go like, well, I don't know, and maybe this, and you give yourself questions and answers. There was no Q&A about this. Bert said he would hold on his letter until Kevin heard back. Kevin said he made it clear to Brad Gray that no answer will be treated as no handling, and he will move up to Sumner. He said he thinks Brad Gray will try to call Tom and for Dovin to make sure he doesn't take his calls, that he is threatening them and he doesn't want them to call Tom and get the idea he knows nothing about the show. As Dovin said, Tom is not briefed on this, so to undermine the threats he is making. Kevin said he would rather have the small newspaper article about someone at Paramount squashing the show and even be quoted in it than have a video clip that could be re-aired. Wow. They're going hard to the mat right now. He said Moonves had no problem pulling the plug on the Reagan show on CBS. That's in relation to a TV show. I think it was called The Reagans or Reagans, and Les Moonves canceled it. It was like a mini-series on Ronnie and Nancy Reagan. He said that it is time to play hardball on this, and that this is what he would do. No other studio would treat their biggest star this way, and Gray knows he has until the end of the day to get back to him, or he would be treating it as he couldn't or wouldn't handle it, and will then go up the org board. Bert agreed not to send his letter until Gray had the chance to respond. There was then some discussion about contract negotiations, and Bert said Brad Gray will be terrified if he thinks the contract is in jeopardy. That now is the time to apply some pressure. Kevin and Rick agreed. They left it that they were going to put together a summary of the strengths and weaknesses of the other studios. Dovin told them that the ideal scene is that Paramount comes around and they work with them for another 40 years, but it is a matter of whether they are going to do the right thing or not. Bonanza. Okay, next page. Paul Block then called Kim Christensen. He told him he got the questions and that he had spoken to CAA and that they would be contacting him concerning them. That he had only one comment, being new on the team, not time during his hiring, briefing, or representation has there been any mention of Scientology or David Miscavige, and he has nothing to do with Tom Cruise making movies, and that is a fact, and that he can be quoted. Christensen told him he appreciated the call and that he was going out on another assignment, and if asked, the CAA people could call him in the afternoon as he will be out for a while. Paul said that he didn't sound like he was in a big hurry, but was a bit surprised that CAA would be willing to talk on the record. Once Kevin, Paula, and Rick have reached Christensen, I will send a further report, and Bert will send over a copy of the letter. This is okay. Much love, Mike. Okay. So really, at the end of the day, Mike and Michael Dovin, Mike Rinder, Michael Dovin, met with Tom Cruise's agents and all of the people that are kind of on Tom Cruise's team in the Cruise entertainment team, and they all talked about how awesome Tom Cruise was and how shitty Paramount was. That's really, at the end of the day, what just happened. Now, I should note, there are a few more documents. They kind of switch over to just Comedy Central in general, because as we mentioned in the last video, in the last documents, Andy Dick was going to do some skit show about Tom Cruise and Katie Holmes' wedding, and he was going to be their wedding planner in this skit. So that's still in the oven being cooked up. And Scientology and Michael Dovin and all Tom Cruise's camp are trying to shut down all this stuff, and it doesn't look like it's going to get shut down. So we'll have to see what happens in the next documents. But I hope you guys enjoy these. I hope this gives you an idea of what happens behind the scenes in these Scientology and OSA meetings. We don't really get a chance. There's not a lot of meetings like this where the OSA folks are going out into the real world and meeting with these professionals. And it really does seem like Michael Dovin, like there was a time period around this time where Michael Dovin got in trouble because Tom Cruise was, during the years, the late 90s and the early 2000s, Tom Cruise was moving away from Scientology. And when he got back in, he was so fanatical that he was getting mad at Michael Dovin for not being a better Scientologist. So Michael Dovin had to switch over into fanatical zone in order to stay in Odin Productions, and it looks like he's still in that mode when he's jumping on the conference table, slamming it and freaking out in meetings with these lawyers and agents and stuff like that. So that's kind of wild. There are stories about Tom Cruise throwing Michael Dovin into a refrigerator and denting the refrigerator. Like that's how Tom Cruise is reportedly, allegedly dealing with his own employees that are Scientologists. So they don't mess around in the Tom Cruise world. And I'm trying to find them. I haven't been able to find these documents again, but there are some documents about ethics handlings and interrogations being done at Odin Productions by Sea Org members. So I'm going to see if I can pull those up and find those. And yeah, it's kind of wild. But that's our document for today. Hope you enjoyed this episode. Thanks for sticking around till the very end. And until next time. Thanks for watching. If you'd like to help support the channel, feel free to check out the merch store link in the description. We have Hail Xenu, Xenu is my homeboy, and BFG branded mouse pads, shirts, mugs, all sorts of other stuff in there that helps us to bring you new content on a regular basis. You can also pick up a copy of my book, Blown for Good, Behind the Iron Curtain of Scientology, in hardback, Kindle, and Audible versions as well. There's also a link to our podcast, and you can get that on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts. And if you'd like to watch another video, you can click on this link right here, or you can click on this one here, or you can click on the subscribe button right here. Thanks a lot. Until next time.